At the beginning of Mass, I told you about the three things that I have in common with St. Patrick. I said he was not Irish, and I'm not Irish. Well, maybe I am a little bit. I'll tell you a couple of stories that kind of connects me with St. Patrick and the great Catholic tradition that comes out of Ireland. About 3 or 4 years ago, I went to the doctor, and she took a blood test. Blood test came back, and my white blood count was a little bit low. And doctor calls and said, we're a little concerned. Your white blood count is a little bit low. It could be this, it could be that. And the first thing that all of us do when we get a report from the doctor is go to the internet and find out what we have. I was convinced that my next call would be to Fuller's Funeral Home to come and get me, right? Because you can imagine all the possibilities with a low white blood count. So went to her office, and she said to me, we really have to take some very sophisticated genetic testing on you to find out why, because there's no indication that you have leukemia. Well, thank God for that. So they took a bone marrow test. Didn't hurt. And they sent it out to some special laboratory. And it came back saying that there was nothing really wrong with me except I had a broken gene, which is traced back to either Ireland or Wales. So I called up my sister, and I said, Marie, I got an Irish gene in me. She said, yes, we always knew there was something different about you. So here I am. Whatever part of me is, it is, okay? The second thing that connected me very much to Ireland was that when I was in college, this is 50 years ago, okay? I got it out, okay? 50 years ago, I had my roommate. He's now a Monsignor up in Brooklyn. I am not a Monsignor, but he is a Monsignor. And he was trained as an Irish dancer. He and his brother were very, very good Irish dancers, and they were so good that they would go to the feshes and compete, and then later on even became a judge at the Irish fesh. And he was always being solicited to do the Irish dancing on different occasions, especially St. Patrick's Day. So he got a gig, as they say, at a nursing home for St. Patrick's Day. But he got a phone call from his brother, and the brother said to him, he said, I can't come tonight because I'm sick. And so my roommate said to me, he said, would you fill in for my brother? I said, are you kidding? I don't know what to do. So he says to me, it's worth $25. And $25 50 years ago, a lot of money. I said, show me what to do. I didn't realize I had to put a kilt on. You had to see that scene. So we get to the nursing home, and I put the kilt on. And he says, okay, let's go out there and just do what I do. So the music starts. They had this, I think they called them a Victrola in those days. That's how long ago it was. And he starts, Henry, come here, I'll show you how to do it. All right, yeah.
I knew I should stay home.
All right, Henry. Okay, that's enough, Henry. My back is getting... Now, it really worked. You know why? It's not that I was any good at it, but most of the people in the nursing home were senile. They didn't know the difference, so they were clapping like crazy. And I took my bows and went like that. You know, they were delighted. Third thing, I guess, on a more serious note, is that I grew up in a very, very Irish parish with a lot of Irish priests. And I was educated by a lot of Irish nuns and Irish brothers. And they really passed on their faith to the students that they taught. And so I grew up having a great appreciation of what happened with St. Patrick, and then what happened with the church in Ireland, and the sufferings of the church in Ireland. And then, of course, they often talked about the hungers, the Irish potato famine. Heard about all of those things. And then, of course, the jewel in the crown was St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City. So let me just give you a little bit of the history. I'm sure you know this. St. Patrick was born in what we know today as England. It was a Roman colony. He came from, I'd say, middle-class family. They owned property, but he was kidnapped. You heard he was kidnapped around the year 420, 430, and brought to Ireland as a slave. And they have him out doing some work as a shepherd. And he lasted there 6 years in captivity. And he finally got the courage up to escape. He said, enough of this. And he walked 200 miles to a boat, and it took him back to England. While he's in England, he realizes that he had an obligation to bring the faith to Ireland. And he studied to be a priest. And after 6 years of captivity, he goes back, and he begins as a missionary in Ireland. And the story has it, of course, that he cast the snakes out of Ireland. But what do we mean by the snakes? It was the pagan priests and the pagan religion, because in those days, and even in the Old Testament, the snake was the symbol of the devil or paganism. So he brings the faith back to Ireland, and he even uses some of the symbols that the pagans used in order to instill the faith in the people. So just this vestment that I have on today, this is the Celtic Cross. You know where it comes from? Of course, it's the cross of Christ, but it's also symbolic of the sun, which the pagans worshipped. And Patrick was smart enough to incorporate it right into the cross. And today we have it as the Celtic Cross. So as you know, from that time on, the faith grew and grew and grew in Ireland. And Ireland became a very, very strong Catholic country over the years. As a matter of fact, so much so that during the Dark Ages, we had the great monasteries in Ireland. And it's told to us, and it's well documented, that the Irish saved civilization because they retained knowledge in the monasteries. They copied the great books and saved them for the future generations of Europe. And for us, we are still receiving a great deal of wisdom from the great libraries preserved by the Irish monks. The Irish also underwent tremendous persecution, and this is part of being a Christian. If you're a Christian and you do not experience persecution, you're really not living the faith. Jesus was persecuted, and so should the Christian expect persecution if you are living up to your responsibilities that you took upon yourself at baptism. And during the Protestant Reformation, when the Irish were being forced to accept Protestantism, to accept the Church of England as their church against the wishes of the English monarchs, the Irish went through tremendous persecution. They lost their property. Many of them lost their lives. And I was always impressed by the stories of the Irish priests. They call them the Hedge Priests. And they were being chased by the British. They were being turned in by their Protestant neighbors. And these Hedge Priests got the name Hedge Priest because they would say Mass in secret and sometimes outdoors behind the hedges. And that way they couldn't get caught by the British soldiers and turned in by their neighbors. And some of the persecutions that they went through, those priests, they're horrendous. They are horrendous what they went through. Beatings, hangings, drawn and quartered, disembowelment. I still remember some of the names. Oliver Plunkett was one of the great names of those priests that gave their lives for the faith in Ireland. And the faith survived despite the persecutions that have gone on hundreds of years. Next great era was the Irish potato famine, and these people literally starved by the British, literally allowed to starve. The only hope they had was to get out of Ireland and come to America. And I was on one of those little boats. They were boats. They weren't even ships that they came on. They were packed in like sardines. And you can hear the stories of how they suffered on those boats. Came here with nothing but their faith. And because of their great faith, the church in America grew. Before the Irish got here, Catholic presence was minimal. Once the Irish came, and they weren't welcomed with open arms either. Believe me, they were not welcomed with open arms here. They were persecuted here too. The church began to grow and grow and grow and become strong and vibrant. So I mentioned to you a little bit earlier, one of the great symbols of Irish Catholic presence in this country is St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York. And even before the present St. Patrick's, it was the old St. Patrick's in an area now it's called Chinatown. It's the Mulberry Street area. Another St. Patrick's Cathedral came first. Beautiful church, another tribute to the great Irish presence in this country. St. Patrick was a missionary. We hear that in the gospel today. I'll make you fishers of men. That's what that means. I'll make you fishers of men. We have an obligation to go out and bring people to the truth, to the Catholic Church. Cast out the net. John Paul the Great would say, cast the net out wide. Do not be afraid. And there's going to be a big haul. A haul what? Not fish. People. People being hauled into the kingdom of God. That's what St. Patrick's Day is all about. It's not about a parade. It's about the faith. We can never lose sight of that. And our obligation to spread that faith, to bring in other people, to Jesus Christ, into the kingdom of God. St. Patrick had that missionary zeal. We cannot lose that missionary zeal today. All of us Americans have inherited our faith in this country to a great extent through the work, not just of St. Patrick, but of the thousands and millions of Irishmen and women and their priests and their religious sisters and brothers who brought the faith to this country and who spread the faith not just in the churches, but through a Catholic school system, through orphanages, through hospitals. Go trace their roots and see where they came from. They came from the great St. Patrick. They came from his sons and daughters, the sons and daughters of Ireland, and we are the inheritors of that great faith. Erin go bragh.